Okay, so let's kind of ease back into the week. Hope you had a good weekend. Yeah? No? All right.
Yeah.
Too short?
Oh, yeah.
My wife told me that I needed to get back to work so I could rest. Got too much going on at the house. Lots of home repairs and updates and maintenance. Pretty big project, so yeah, there's all my receipts. I got to go pay for it. Congratulations, you've turned the corner. Midterm, it's downhill from here, headed toward December. The first week of December, I think we're wrapping things up. So then we're out a week for Thanksgiving. And we're already almost mid-October. So a couple more times of this, you'll be going, where did EMT school go? So we're done with medical. We started trauma, or we are going to start trauma lecture today. We'll just do this chapter here. It's probably the most important chapter of the group. If you get this, you can kind of understand trauma. You started some trauma skills Thursday. We're ahead in lab, but that's okay. We can stay ahead because it gives us opportunities to do more things. Housekeeping wise, probably tomorrow I'll have your review ready for your med emergencies exam, and that's kind of comprehensive over the entire book up until this point, kind of like a midterm exam, and that will be given a week from Wednesday. A week from Wednesday. A week from Wednesday.
What's a week
Do what now?
What is a week from?
Your medical exam, or what we could call a midterm exam, and I'll get that review out probably tomorrow. That I'll be with you this week, but I'm taking personal time next week. Happens to be fall break at the other school that I'm associated with, so I'm going to take some personal days and some time that I have accumulated, and you'll have a sub in here week after next. But one of those really for just 2 days, because you take your test Wednesday. Sherry will provide clinical orientation for you, and then Thursday will be a lab day. So just Monday and Tuesday. Any other questions? Now, yes.
Yeah, the slides posted.
For this one, I will at the break. Is that okay? I will at the break. It may be in there, but I haven't verified it. So, and I need to email it to Regan as well. Any other questions?
Chest pain accreditation one, is that one due?
Yeah. I'd like for you to work that one. Kind of give some insight on why you take somebody to an accredited chest pain center. Remind me at break, and I'll check the due date on it. Make sure it's open for you. And anything else? All right, so let's do some physics today. Don't you love physics, Luke? Did you say
Had a G to there.
Let's do some physics. Do you like firearms? Will you give the firearms lecture today?
Sure.
Sure, okay. All right. So this is, let me start this way. What is an NOI? When speaking of a scene size up, what's it mean by NOI? Nature of illness. So let's put that aside, and now let's have an MOI, which is mechanism of injury. So that's what we're going to start talking about in the next for the rest of the course, basically. Mechanism of injury. Gus, give me an example of a mechanism of injury. Can you think of one?
Like you're up on a ladder and you fall.
So what was the mechanism?
The fall.
The fall.
When you hit the ground.
When you hit the ground. What caused it?
What do you mean? What caused?
Yeah, what caused it?
Drown, the force that you were coming down with.
Gravity, right? Gravity when you're falling, isn't it? You like gravity because you don't float off into space, but when you're falling, it's a pain, literally. So what was preceding gravity having its effect? There was something before gravity having its role. You slip, you missed the step, you overreached, the ladder slipped from under you. Was that preventable? Could it be prevented? Is trauma a disease?
No.
Well, it's not necessarily got a pathogen, does it? It doesn't have a virus or bacteria component. But should we treat it as a disease? Billy? Should we treat trauma as a disease? What's that entail? If trauma is to be treated as a disease, what does that entail? How what? Okay, that's justification for calling it a disease because it happens every day. But if it is a disease, or if we treat it as a disease, what does that entail? Huh?
You can like what we do.
If we are to approach the disease of trauma, and I understand that's in quotations, we're giving this a new term. We're going to treat it as a disease. Treating trauma as a disease, what does that entail? Think about how we treat actual diseases. What does it entail to treat trauma as a disease? Oh, let's do it this way. The flu. The flu is a disease, right? How do we treat it? Huh? Vaccines. What's the analogy over to trauma? We don't have a vaccine for trauma.
Try to prevent it.
Prevention, okay. And then what do we have? And what's under the prevention? If I was to make bullet points under prevention, what would that be in terms of trauma? Safety. That's a pretty big category, isn't it? But it is a category. If you take safety, if you take a safety class or you go through the safety portion of a chemistry lab, what are you being taught? Rules and regulations, codes, enforcement, engineering. Think seat belts, think helmets. Is there a DOT? I bet there is a DOT label on that helmet. A standard, if you will, that helmet must be built by. There's probably a standard for the face piece. So that's all engineering. That's how we treat trauma as a disease. Anything else? What if you catch the disease? Treatment. And where do you do that at, trauma-wise? A hospital? That's a pretty good one, isn't it? Hospitals are pretty good. Is that the only place? Yeah, well, how about an ambulance? Yeah, that's kind of what we're here for, right? We treat it at the ambulance. We treat it on scene. Do we treat it prior to being on scene? Bystanders? First responders? People trained in the industry to work on accidents? So you see pretty quick that there's a lot of effort and money and stuff being spent on the disease as trauma. Some of us are older, and we used to call motor vehicle, when you had a car wreck, we would call those MVAs, motor vehicle accidents. So when I was in your seat, that's what they called them, MVAs, motor vehicle accidents. Now they call them NVCs. It just drives me crazy. You changing my acronyms, man. I grew up with that acronym. Why do you think they changed it from motor vehicle accident to motor vehicle collision?
You can have an accident without a collision.
Not always an accident.
Because accidents mean someone's not at fault.
Accident, exactly right. Frank's exactly right. An accident removes a preventable cause. An accident removes a preventable cause. So I want you to put yourself in this mindset that when we see these traumas, they're not accidents. They literally are. Here, hold my beer, watch. You know, we make that joke in this business all the time. I hope there's not beer in there. We make that joke in this business all the time that prior to every 911 call, somebody handed someone else their drink to hold. Or testosterone took over and says, if you can do that, I can too. You know, if Gus does a backflip in the classroom right here, Luke may try it. Because it impressed everybody, right? I did have a kid in here who could do a backflip standing right here. I'm like, don't do that again. You're going to kick the projector. Flat-footed, just stand here and backflip.
How about diving into a 1-inch
Yeah, with all those signs that say,
head first?
yeah, don't dive. Don't dive. Don't get on a motorcycle. Don't fly a helicopter. Don't fly a glider. So we got all these mechanisms of injury out here, and that's what this chapter talks about, this trauma overview chapter. And Gus, how that gravity affects us. How did that force, deceleration, acceleration, speed, mass, velocity, all these terms of physics get to going in here. Now, I think over the years, and those of you who were in there earlier heard me say this, over the years we've developed a lot of things in this trauma overview that are really just becoming mythological now. They're becoming mythological. And if there is some basis to it, there's not any application of it. And so that's troublesome too. You're going to see in this presentation today, we have all of these different types of automobile accidents. Like we got head-ons, we got T-bones, we got side impacts, rear impacts, rollovers, laterals, car versus pedestrian. Is the pedestrian an adult or is the pedestrian a child? Predictable injury patterns. Because this was a rollover, you should be able to predict this injury pattern. Let me tell you that that's never been applied in the field. That's never been applied in the field. I can't count the number of car wrecks I pulled up on and go, that was a lateral impact. I suspect pelvic injuries. It doesn't work that way. So I don't know who came up with this or when they came up with it or what they thought the utility of it was, but we're going to look at that and I'll kind of downplay some of that too and tell you that there's no scientific controlled study basis for it. And the first one right here is called this trauma scoring. It's kind of like you get a high score in trauma, right? I like the common sense approach to this stuff. I want the EMTs and paramedics to pull up on the scene and go, this is bad, we need to go. This is bad, we need to go. So I'm going to quote a study to you, and you tell me your gut reaction to it. There was a study performed that said a trauma victim had better outcomes if an ambulance did not take them to the hospital, that the bystander took them to the hospital. So we got a trauma patient. You got two choices. You can call 911 and get an ambulance all the way up to an ALS unit, or your buddy who witnessed the horrific event got you in the car, took you to the hospital, and kicked you out at the ER doors. Survivability is better with the bystander. How does that make you feel? Does it make you go, what the hell am I doing here?
I mean, that's a lot more. That's quicker. You know, you can get them there quicker, and you saw exactly what happened.
So he's got a point.
So long term it could be,
Huh?
long term it could be opposite. Though. Say like a guy
No, we're talking about survivability. Like living and walking out is better without the ambulance.
Can I tell you what something
Sure, you can tell me your thought.
So we had a STEMI from the Baylor, and every single transport service we had over here was a 4-hour ETA for a STEMI. It would have been faster for the patient's family to take them.
To walk out AMA
Yeah, and take
and drive them all the way down to Baylor, Hart, and Dallas if you want to go there.
Yeah. So that kind of puts to that.
Yeah. Yeah. You do have that, I need to call the ambulance, dispatch, the delays, or I say delays, things that eat up time. And stare it right on, time is tissue, especially when you got somebody bleeding out. But we tell everyone to call 911, don't we? If I'm in this mode, if I'm in the prevention mode, how you think I could go talk to a group of high school seniors and say, if you get hurt, get your buddy to drive you, don't call 911? Do you think I could do that? No, I'm not promoting my job very well, am I? The statistic is true, though. I hate to tell you, but if I was being honest with them, overall, that would be a better scenario. And that bothers the hell out of me. And I think we're going to see some stuff in this presentation, especially when we get to paramedic as well. And this may be part of it. A secondary study to that study was when we put trauma victims in the back of the ambulance. So let's get the private sector out of it. Let's get the buddy in the Camaro. Let's get him out. Let's just say you are in an ambulance now. Let's talk about survivability of the trauma patient. If you just put them in the ambulance, no packaging, throw them on the cot, no time on, you get on scene, you see them, put them on your cot, get in the ambulance and go. Don't take vital signs. Don't put a heart monitor on. Don't put a C-collar on. Certainly no backboard. And you just take that patient to the hospital, and then you have another cohort, a group of patients that you do everything you're taught to do in EMT and paramedic school. What do you think the survivability is? Which group is better?
The first one.
The first one is better. The first one is better. Empirically, you know what that means? Anyone? Empirically, I'm about to make the rest of the sentence. It's a comma there. Empirically, what's that mean? Huh? What's empirical testing? You're going to learn something today. And now I'm satisfied. My goal every day is for you to learn something from me. And now I've met my goal for the day. If we get more than this, great. Empirical means I saw it firsthand. It's real. I think chickens walk on 2 legs. I'm going to go find a chicken. Guess what? They only have 2 legs and they walk on them. You see what I'm saying? I have a hypothesis, or I have my suspicion, or the data show that this should work this way. Let me go empirically test it. Let me go actually see the result of the test. So empirically, I know me getting a blood pressure on scene was not benefiting the patient. Yet I knew of EMS instructors, EMT instructors, who would tell you and get mad at you that in your little scenarios, if you didn't get a blood pressure before you left the scene, you failed the scenario. I'm like, I don't even care about the blood pressure. You'll see people in your organizations, you go to work for XYZ EMS, and you don't document a blood pressure in that little spot to put it on the paperwork or in the computer, they'll jump on you. You may not even be able to close out the computer screen without filling in that required field of blood pressure. But there are going to be trauma scenes that you don't even want to spend the time to take the blood pressure. There'll be trauma scenes you just go up and go, hey, all right, we got to go. And the data indicate that you're better off for your patient to do that. Am I saying forgo all treatment? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the time on scene is where we start eating this stuff up at. We're going to see a lot of things in this chapter that you think, man, I got to do that with my trauma patient. I think that's one of the bad ones right there, the trauma score. Then we got to figure out where in the hell we're going to take them. Where are we going to take them? So we're going to spend a lot of time, and I'll have Emily come in and talk to you at some point as well about trauma systems, trauma hospitals, designations, and things like that. And then lastly, the transport mode. I'm not getting off into that yet. Let's see. Amber, what is meant by the term multi-system trauma?
Multiple systems.
What kind of systems?
Probably multiple body systems.
Body systems, yes. Multiple body systems. Can you give me an example of a multi-system trauma?
Something affecting maybe the respiratory and circulatory system.
So maybe a punctured lung plus a lacerated femoral artery, okay? A broken femur and a head injury. What's the what if it's not multi-system, then what is it? Single system. Which one's worse?
Multi.
Okay, yeah, multi, right?
Depends on which multi or which.
Well, yeah, which ones are involved, but as a general rule, the more body systems are exposed to trauma, the worse the victim outcome will be, or the more dire the emergency. If you step off that ladder wrong, Gus, and you roll your ankle and you dislocated it, or maybe even broken a tib fib or a bone in your foot, is a lot different than falling from a scaffold, getting that injury along with a piece of rebar in your spleen. What about hidden injuries, Amber? What about injuries I can't see? There's no broken bone. There's no object sticking in me. We call that blunt force trauma. There's a trauma inside the body that you can't see, but there's also this angulated bone, and you're more apt to look at that angulated bone and try to splint that, but you didn't realize that the spleen was ruptured during the fall, and that's a hidden internal injury. And so we call that splinting to death. I don't think that's a medical term. I don't know that you'll necessarily find it in your textbook. If it was a good one, you would. Splinting to death. And Grady, what I mean by splinting to death? What's it mean to splint someone to death?
Splint causes more harm than good.
You're worried about the wrong thing.
I think all those are accurate answers. But I think you hit it right on. I'm focused on the gross. I'm focused on the angulation. That arm is not supposed to be that way. I should splint that. At the same time, I've got a chest trauma going on, or an internal bleed, or a head injury, or something like that. Those things pull our attention to it. And we feel like we should do something about it. You'll hear people go, oh, you can't move that trauma victim, they're not in a backboard. That just needs to go away. And I had an argument here internally in the last couple of weeks about this, and I'm standing my ground on it. And I'm sorry. I don't care what you do in Fannin County. It's not proper. We're splinting to death. And we can't do that, especially when you have that much time elapsed anyway. And then we'll get into some blast injuries. Okay. This is probably on a test somewhere. I don't know that I would ask you the question, but it's something that they want you to know. If you're less than 44, trauma is probably what's going to kill you. You don't have the old person diseases yet. So those of us who pushed past 44, it's that medical part of the book that's going to get us. It's the 4 horsemen, right? It's the 4 horsemen. That's what we're running from. But if you're younger than 44, which everybody in here but 2 of us are, if you were to die, it would probably be trauma. Odds are it's going to be trauma related. You're more active. You're riskier. You take riskier behaviors, especially if you're a young male. People who have stood for voluntary castration in prison systems, their lifespan went up. You ever watch The Incredible Dr. Pol? That's a wonderful show. That is the most uplifting show I think I've ever watched. The Incredible Dr. Pol. I just wish I had that old man's attitude every day I woke up. But I always love it. I always laugh when he goes out and he castrates animals. He said, take the balls out, the sense comes back. Do y'all realize this is why we're talking about this today? You young males. Impressive, right? Got to impress the ladies. Got to impress the girls. Risky behaviors. Bar fights. Nothing good happens after midnight. All those things. Drive fast. Fast cars, wild women. You know all about that, right, Gus? Gus is like, yep, that's my life right there. Fast cars and wild women. If we fall into this category, I saw a disabled veteran, bless his heart. He got out in the coolest looking 24 model. I've never seen one before in person, Corvette at Walmart. And he's there every Sunday morning buying groceries. And he is like 80, but he gets out in his red Vet. And it is a nice Vet. Oh, the memories, right? He's just living the memories. So it does get old people as well. Traumatic injuries occur to physical forces applied to the body. Now, follow along with me. See if you can catch this. What is energy, Luke? You said you wanted to do physics. What is energy? What 2 forms does energy come in? Broad categories. Can you help me with that? That's a form of energy, but I was really talking about kinetic and potential. You remember those from back in high school physics, right? Kinetic energy is the energy of motion, isn't it? You're moving, or something's moving. Is something moving with heat energy transfer?
Yes.
Yes. Is something moving with nuclear radiation that's burning the skin because I'm too close to the source? Is something moving? Yes. Is something moving if you get a bad sunburn?
Yes.
Yes. So we're moving this energy. And your body has the ability to absorb that energy. Amber, I'm going to very lightly punch you. I will not cause harm, okay? Are you okay with that?
I have 5 siblings. I doubt you'll hurt me.
Did I transfer energy? How come she didn't scream out in pain? And I hope I didn't leave a bruise, because if I did, you need to go find medical attention. It's not me. How come she didn't scream out in pain or have a bruise? Huh? There wasn't enough force. There wasn't enough energy transferred over a period of time. Rate. Can you give me a mathematical definition of rate?
Unless you're looking for force times acceleration.
Something over time, right? Miles per hour, feet per second. Rads, the unit of radiations. Do what? Yeah. Yeah. So a rate is something over time. Some unit over time. This rate of transfer, her body was able to take it. So what would I have to do to actually cause her trauma? It's kind of morbid, but you get the point. What would I have to do to cause her trauma? Hit harder or faster? Hit harder or faster. So if you want to know what the definition of trauma is, it's the body taking a force faster than it can dissipate the force. It's the body absorbing energy faster than it can safely displace the energy. Did all of you drive or move today at least 50 miles an hour? Some faster, but I think all of us probably hit at least that velocity. How come we're still okay? Because obviously we went to 0 miles per hour. How are we okay? Well, we stopped slowly, didn't we? We decelerated at a rate that we could absorb. If you were doing that 50 miles an hour and hit the bridge abutment, you probably wouldn't be in here today. You may actually be dead. Why? Because the time became such a big factor in this. So yes, what's my energy equation? Squared. Velocity squared. So in the energy transfer equation, 1/2 mass times velocity squared, what's the biggest factor? Velocity. Squared. So if I take a rifle bullet, here you go, Luke. Give me a rifle bullet size and average feet per second.
308, 3,160 feet per second.
3,160 feet per second. Square that. So that means multiply it by itself. That's a big number. Can we just say it's a big number? But how much does that bullet weigh?
168 grains.
168 grains. Can you give me that in milligrams? Or 60 grains to a milligram? That's okay. That's okay.
I can look it up.
Okay, look it up. We're going to find out it doesn't really weigh that much, does it? Well, how does it inflict so much damage, though, when it strikes something living, the velocity? Let me shift gears a minute. Hunter, what about a train? A freight train, a fully loaded freight train that's coming across the desert Southwest headed to Texas with all those Amazon crates on it. And those things are like 3 miles long, it looks like. It may be even longer than that. And they're just barely chugging coming out of the desert valley headed toward Texas. They're climbing a slow grade. They're just barely moving. Do they have a lot of energy with them? Where's that energy coming from? Because they're just moving, it looks like 10 miles an hour. But gosh, they're heavy, aren't they? Gosh, they're heavy. Or that unit is heavy. Both of them going to kill you if you get in front of it. How quickly is it transferred? You got a more direct answer to my question? Okay.
I have the still 100 milligrams.
Yeah.
It's 10,886.2 milligrams. Grains to milligram.
No, you said 60 grains is a milligram, right?
60.
It was 168 grains. milligrams.
I think you're messing up. I think you're messing up on your metric conversion there. That would be awful heavy. But we've made the point, and we'll fix that here in a minute, Luke. We've made the point. What about thermal burns? Because burns come in trauma, so we're going to have first, second, third degree burns and stuff like that to the skin. What are we absorbing there? Heat. Faster than we can dissipate it, faster than we can absorb it. So energy transferred faster than we can absorb it results in trauma. Easy enough? Okay. Okay. It's okay, Luke. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You ever imagine this? Imagine you're walking up on a trauma scene. You get out of your ambulance, you walk up to a trauma scene. Do you think there's ever a point in your career you go, damn, that's gotta hurt? Or you walk up there and go, maybe you're not even there yet, you just heard about it. If you're dispatched to a private plane crash over in the field in Atoka County, Oklahoma. Plane crash in the field of Atoka County, Oklahoma. You're not even there. You haven't even got your boots on yet. What are you thinking already? Damn, that's got to hurt. You know how many airplanes are above us right now at any one time? We're real close to the airport, too. A lot. Heard a statistic this morning that the equivalent of a 737 loaded die every day due to opioids. Well, that sounds like a lot of people, and it is a lot of people. But imagine that thing falling out of the sky. You're not even there yet, but your index of suspicion is what? A lot, because Gus, that old gravity thing. And you were falling from, 30,000 feet. We saw that video over here recently, that airliner that was just in that death spiral before it crashed. People are recording these things now. Your index of suspicion is crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. 6 victims wounded in a gunfire incident. You're not even there, but your index of suspicion is really high. Do you already know your trauma center designation before you arrive on scene in those calls? At least you should be thinking about it. Should your shift captain, EMS captain, battalion chief, supervisor, whatever you want to call this person, should they be getting on the phone or the website to see what trauma facilities are available in the area? And I don't know if Emily can still do it or not. Her passwords and stuff have probably expired. But she could log into a website that shows you all the trauma centers in the area. Well, as many as you wanted across the state of Texas. You could zone in or zone out. How many beds they had available? How many ICU beds they had available? How many trauma surgeons were on call? And so if I've got a multi-victim incident, I can't send 25 major trauma victims to TMC, even though they're a level 3 trauma center. They might get 1 or 2. Sherman might get 1 or 2. McKinney might get 3 or 4. Plano might get 5 or 6. Parkland may get the rest. Does that make sense to you? So we also have to think about that. When? When do we think about it? Well, probably before the call even came in, if you want to know the truth. You probably checked on those things at shift change. You came in the morning and your higher-ups alerted you like, hey, TMC has no trauma beds available at the moment. Make sure all head injuries go to Plano or something like that. Even before the accident happens, you're kind of pre-alerted about your transport decisions. Please do not freelance your transport decisions, especially on multi-system casualties or multi-casualty incidents. Do not freelance. and we'll talk about triage a little more later, but you'll get into environments to where there's a transportation officer on your scene, and that transportation officer will tell you where to go with your trauma victims, because there's a big coordination to get all that done. If you just grab and go, here's one dying, let me take him to the hospital, you're going to mess up the whole triage environment. But even with just one casualty, one incident, you kind of need to know before you even get the call where you're going to take them. Questions to that? Gus, did you have a question? Okay. But you get on scene, you say, I'm going to ramp this up, or because the injuries are so severe, or I'm going to ramp this down, de-escalate the nature of this call, because this pilot was very skilled and was able to land this plane in the Hudson with nobody hurt at all. Nobody hurt at all. So be sure you de-escalate it as well as escalate it. We don't know until we see it. We don't know until we see it. For sure. That's kind of empirical. I empirically know. Okay, so I just told you this. Energy levels greater than the tolerance of the body to absorb them or tolerate them. I'm dropping my mic piece here. No problem there. And we've already been through this. I always like the bottom. This is one of my favorite sentences in physics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's only converted or transformed. And man, you could get off in a black hole on that if you really stop to think about where energy comes from. Where is the energy that I'm using, you're using to be alive today? Well, it came from plants, it came from animals, it came from this. You can go all the way back to the sunlight. The sun is pushing energy onto the earth all the time, and we're using that energy right now. Isn't that fascinating? And I'm using this energy, and then I'm getting rid of this energy. And how am I getting rid of it? Well, most of it's by heat or momentum, and then that energy is being picked up by the air conditioning system here from all of us, and it's being kicked out on the roof back into the atmosphere. And the movement of that energy from an area of high or low concentration to an actual area of higher concentration requires energy. And where did that energy come from? Well, it was in the form of electric energy, which probably came from a coal-fired plant somewhere, or a solar panel somewhere, or a wind turbine, or a radioactive material heating up what? I mean, it's just like, it's all energy. It's all energy. And you could argue that most of it came from the sun. And then you could argue that most of that probably came from the Big Bang. And you're like, where did it all come from? And then you're like, in a new class. All right? You're over in philosophy or something. Wow. Fascinating. Who watches NASCAR? Nobody. You're my kind of people. I don't watch it either. Nothing more boring to me than watching cars go around in circles. Have you ever watched NASCAR? Have you ever watched it at night? Watched a night race? They're pretty cool. Because when the cars enter the turns and they have to apply the brakes, what do the brake rotors start doing on those cars? Glowing. Because they're taking the energy of that forward momentum of that car and transferring that energy into heat. And the heat's being dissipated by the brake rotor. But where'd that energy come from? Well, it came from the gasoline in the tank. And then you could trace it back all the way to the sun if you wanted to. But how does it slow the car? Well, it glows the brake rotors. All this needs to be in your mind when you're looking at a trauma scene. Luke, your helmet is made to crack. It is made to crack. When I pick up a motorcycle helmet or I see a motorcycle helmet that's all shattered, I know a couple of things already. Number one, large amount of energy just got transferred. Enough energy to send that helmet into a bunch of cracks and pieces. Number two, because the helmet took that energy, maybe the brain didn't take that energy. That's the idea of the helmet. It's going to take the energy instead of the cranium or the skull taking it. Number 3, there's still a large amount of energy being transferred here. And so am I happy that the helmet shattered? Yes. At the same time, the helmet shattered. You with me on that? There was a head inside that thing. So what happened to that head? Like old cars, old trucks, the old classics, the things your grandparents, your great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents drove. You might have heard your grandpa say, they don't make them like they used to. Look at the plastic on this car. Well, I had an old Ford truck. It had a real bumper on it made of steel. What's this? This ain't even a bumper. No, it's a bumper cover, Grandpa. There's no bumper there anymore. I could run that Buick into a tree and that tree would go out. Yeah, I know. But what was the problem with it?
The energy gets transferred to you.
The energy gets transferred to you. We want these cars to fall apart. So we pull up on scene and we go, look at this mechanism of injury. This car is destroyed. Think about your NASCAR crashes where the pieces go all over the infield and up and down the track. Every piece that flew off took some energy with it. And those drivers walk away. If you won't remember because it happened before your time, but Dale Earnhardt got killed in a NASCAR crash and his car didn't come apart. But his brain separated from his spinal cord. His car did not come apart, just the way the impact was. So we want to see these pieces flying everywhere. That's why your car will come apart. And then the other piece of engineering in there, what's the purpose of the airbag in that car? To dissipate some of that energy so you don't have to. All this has to be taken into account when you walk up there with that high index of suspicion. Okay, so there's your equation again. Energy, moving object, 1/2 mass times velocity. Gravity has a limited effect. You're falling from the sky, you'll reach terminal velocity. This will peak out, but it's still fast enough to hurt you when you land on the ground because the ground is not forgiving. There are some mechanisms that we call serious just based upon how high you fell. Obviously, a toddler rolling out of his toddler bed is probably not a significant mechanism of injury. But an old man on Plavix rolling out of his bed and hitting the floor may be a significant mechanism of injury. What's the difference? Comorbidity factors. When I call that into a trauma center, even though he only fell from 2 or 3 feet, well, I call that a high-level trauma alert kind of thing. Well, I kind of alert them to the seriousness of this, not because of how much he fell, but because of what's going on with it. So we got these little rules in here. You know, a fall twice your height is considered significant. There are too many variables on that. What did you fall on? What did you fall into? What type of comorbidity factors? What caused you to fall? Were you electrocuted before you fell? Were you working on the AC unit on the roof and backed into a power line?
What's the standard 4 feet? Or you get out and have a harness on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, kind of a myth. Kind of a myth. And I don't like that. I don't like us trying to put these injuries into categories. Here's Amber's multi-system trauma, fall from heights. We didn't say what height. Motorcycle crashes, just never a good thing. High index of suspicion, Luke. It's just never a good thing. If I get called to a motorcycle crash, they're just not good. Can you tell me why? You're traveling the same speed the other cars are.
You don't have a big barrier around you.
They took all the energy, didn't they? The rider of the motorcycle takes all of the energy. Not the car, the dash, the bumper, the airbag. the seatbelt, all. No. No. You took all the energy. You became the projectile. I'm not going to convince him yet to stop riding, am I? Car versus pedestrian, you just don't win you don't win. You just don't win. And boy, when I walked in this morning, I thought somebody was going to get smacked right out here. I don't know what somebody's going to before something happens. They come around the corner out here and then they hit that crosswalk going down in the parking lot, and those people just come, and that's blind and blind. It's blind for the driver and it's blind for the pedestrian. Somebody's going to get smoked out there one day before they do something about that. I have no idea why there's not a speed bump there to slow that down. It's crazy that yet it's allowed to continue. So why do we wait until something happens before we do something? Certainly not injury prevention, is it? Gunshot wounds, high index of suspicion before I even get there. Amber asked me if I had any stories, and I do. I got called to a woman was shot in the head. Do you know what that does to you when you're responding to a call where someone has been shot in the head? Gus, what would you be thinking on the way?
She probably doesn't have that big of a chance to live.
Yeah, they're going to be dire, aren't they? What else?
Am I gonna get shot in the head?
Am I going to get shot in the head? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, scene safety is certainly a priority there.
Who did it?
Who did it?
What kind of gun?
What kind of gun?
If it's a shotgun, you'll end up one.
Injury non-compatible.
Injuries non-compatible with life. So you're trying to determine, am I going to work this or not work this? Anybody considering the mess? I haven't heard that yet, but are you thinking about it? This is going to be nasty. This is going to be gross. This is going to be something I don't want to see. Are all those thoughts relevant? Do they make sense to you from your vantage point right now? If you're responding to a gunshot wound to the head, if that's what the dispatcher told you, or all of those things playing in your mind, and as you're screaming across town with lights and siren in the middle of the night, are all those things playing in your mind? Yes, yes, and yes. So that's me. That's me. And I approach the house, and I knock on the door, and the door is answered by an elderly woman. Things don't look right already because it just doesn't look like a gunshot scene. There's a man in a recliner watching something on TV. Appears to be like her spouse or something. I'm like, we're at the wrong address, or we got a bogus call. Because this does not look like a gunshot victim anywhere around here. Doesn't look like that kind of scene. And so we kind of like, is anyone here hurt? And she's like, yeah. Okay, where are they at? She's like, oh, I'm talking to you. I said, you don't understand, ma'am. We're called to a gunshot wound. She said, yeah, you're talking to her. It's me. I said, you were shot in the head. She's like, yeah, there's no blood. So what are you thinking now?
She's stupid.
Psych call? This is a psych call.
With a gunshot wound to the head, I think like the cops should be there first.
They were around. I don't remember them being prominent, but
Could be a Nerf gun.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Someone pulled out a Nerf gun.
I'm just thinking psych call. Elderly, he's in a recliner. You get those sometimes. She said, no, I was shot in the head. And I'm like, yeah, right. Who shot you? She said, I shot myself in the head. With what? Pistol? You're convinced you shot yourself in the head, aren't you? And I'm sitting there going, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. She said, look right here. She pulled the old gray hair back, and I'll be damned. There was a hole. And it had a little bit of blood trickling out of it. It was hidden by her hair. Well, it's small caliber. probably 22-ish. Small caliber. Well, let's go to the hospital. She walked to the damn ambulance. What am I thinking? What's going through your mind? What's your mechanism of injury? What's your what do they call that, initial impression?
She got a really hard skull.
Got a really hard skull? Really weak bullet? Something. Moved around?
Yeah, but she's still like conscious. So.
Oh yeah, she is, as you guys would say, she's A&O times 3.
Yep.
Hell, she convinced me she got shot. I was trying to tell her she didn't.
The bullet probably ricocheted 3 times before he-
She put it on top of a metal hair clip. And then the x-ray at the hospital showed that hair clip folded over that small caliber bullet that was lodged under the skin, barely hit the bone. Didn't even penetrate the skull. So yeah, really hard skull with the aid of a shield called a hair clip. Small caliber, small potential energy, a clip, thick part of the skull.
22
Apparently.
Still moving real fast.
Still moving real fast.
Subsonic 22 or something? I don't know.
Maybe a 22 short or something like that. I don't know.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. What's crazy is her husband didn't get out of the recliner.
Why'd you shoot yourself, man? Just call that-
They had gotten into a fight, and she said, "I'll just shoot myself." He's like, "Do it." And she did it. And he's like, "Well, damn." He probably thinks, "You old hard-headed thing, I told you." Obviously a psych call too, right?
Yeah.
But think about what my gut went through. I had the biggest yo-yo of responses, and it's like, I'm supposed to go to sleep after this? But at the same time, somebody said shotgun. Those mechanisms of injuries usually aren't good, even though there are cases of just removing the face and the cranial vault staying intact and the person's 100% alive. We get accustomed to gunshot wounds in the TV, the movies, and the action shows. It's like one gunshot, the guy flies 100 foot in the air and he's gone. He's nothing. And in reality, it's not that way, is it? Reality's not that way. You know, getting shot with a deer rifle, though, is a lot different than getting shot with a handgun. Substantially different. And so, Luke, as you're doing a scene size up on a gunshot wound, before you even get there, if you're responding to a gunshot wound from a deer hunting accident, is a little different than maybe somebody pulling out their 380 in a nightclub, right? Yeah, you're still getting shot, but the survivability of the deer rifle is substantially less due to velocity, right? Due to velocity. And then stabbings. Or is stabbings ultra low velocity? Unless it's a crazed woman. You know, there is some evidence to indicate that a man will attack with a knife upward and a woman will attack downward. And they think it's going for the testicles. You ever watch 2 males fight in the wild, like 2 bulls or 2 buffalo or 2 any male things? You notice how when they headbutt, they're always turning their butt away from each other. But they really want to go in and gore them in the testicles. You ever go squirrel hunting and kill a male squirrel that doesn't have any testicles because a competitor probably bit them out? There's some primates that will get jealous of male offspring and kill them because they don't want any competition. And so when humans get into a fight, some of those instinctual behaviors are still prevalent. The deal with the stab wounds are, it may be just soft tissue injury with some significant bleeding, or it may be in the abdomen with significant bleeding. A lot of sexual assaults perpetrated against females involve genital stabbings. And it's a highly vascular area, and there's a lot of arteries in there, and things can go really crazy in a hurry. Stabbings, the ones I've been on, are just grotesque with the amount of blood that's everywhere. Stabbings are there's the incidental, I'm sharpening my knife on Dad's buffing wheel and it slams into my thigh, versus there's a stabbing in the men's bathroom of a honky-tonk club where somebody just got their butts carved up like unbelievable. And the stabbings I went on were, like I said, grotesque and often involved attempted decapitations and stuff like that. And while you're so focused on airway issues because somebody tried to cut someone's throat, at the same time you've got to expose the chest, and they may have multiple stab wounds in the chest. So stabbings are hard. Stabbings are really hard to deal with because it's internal. You don't know the angle of attack. You may or may not know the length of the knife. You don't know where the bleeding is occurring. And they can be just as deadly, if not as deadly, as a gunshot wound. Two types of trauma real quick, and then I'll pause for questions. Penetrating and blunt force. Penetrating and closed. Blunt force trauma, open trauma. Is one worse than the other? Is one harder to treat than the other? Which one would you rather treat? Nate, which one would you rather treat? Blunt force or penetrating?
Penetrating.
Penetrating? Why? Why do you say that?
With blunt force, you don't really know what's going on.
So blunt force, you don't know the extent or where it's at? If the penetrating trauma was one of those wrought iron fences, decorative fences that the kid tried to jump over and fell on it, was pinned on that fence, now you got to cut the fence away. Take the fence with you, or at least part of it, because we never remove any penetrating objects. Ding, ding. We never remove any penetrating objects because they may be tamponading the blood flow. I'll tell you that most people, if something was stuck in them, will pull it out if possible. Let's go back to hunting, because hunting season's coming up, and the first one will be archery. I keep looking at you, Luke, because you're my firearms guy. But archery, bow and arrow, is that low, medium, or high velocity? In relatively speak with guns, it would be considered a low. But it's still fast, isn't it? Relative to rifle speeds and bullet speeds and handgun speeds and primitive firearm speeds, the bow and arrow, the arrow velocity is low. Now, got to think a bow, right? Simple bow versus a compound bow, where we've compounded the amount of energy being transferred. And what's on the end of those, Luke? What's on the end of those hunting arrows?
Arrowheads.
Arrowheads, okay? More specific.
Razors.
Razor blades, right? Literally razor blades that make up the arrowhead on these hunting arrows. You fall on one because you're coming down the tree stand. You slip on the tree stand and run one through your abdomen or your chest. Significant damage.
Can't pull those out either.
You can't pull them out, can you? So, a pencil in the abdomen, the kid's probably going to pull it out. If I've got something stuck in me, it's probably going to be pulled out if possible. But you take an arrowhead or a fish hook or anything barbed, you can't get it back out. If you fall on one of those decorative fences, you need rescue to cut that piece of fence away to take it to the hospital with you. So, Nate, my point being, some of these penetrating traumas are very difficult to manage. But I will agree with you, the blunt force trauma is hard too, because it's so hidden. And we have to rely on mechanism of injury. He's not bleeding anywhere, but probably bleeding somewhere. meaning I can't see it, but it doesn't mean it's not leaking internally. Hidden injuries. Where can, you guys talk out loud, where could I get rid of a lot of blood in the human body yet not spill any on the ground?
Abdomen or lungs?
The abdomen? Belly? Did I hear lungs? Hold that thought. Your legs, specifically the thigh. About 1 to 2 liters per thigh. 2 to 3 liters in the pelvis. The entire blood volume in the abdomen. 1 to 2 liters in the chest. This is a significant amount of your blood volume, either in the thigh, the pelvis, or the abdomen and the chest. But the abdomen could hold the entire content. It can hold 2 or 3 liters without anything really bruising up or showing, if it's deep under that muscle layer. Now, Jordan mentioned the head, and I'm glad she did. Even though she's not technically correct, I'm glad she mentioned it. So, if I tell you that's a false statement, Jordan, could you correct it to make it a true statement?
What do you mean?
You said that we could hide some blood in the head,
Yes.
but it's already filled with the brain. That's what makes it a false statement. But what's the significance of me pointing this out, you think?
You do have brain bleed or something.
Yeah.
The pressure.
Okay, could have brain bleed, could have increased pressure in the brain. That will not cause signs of shock. So if I see signs of shock, I know it's not leaking. I know it's not all in the brain, but that doesn't eliminate that I could have blood in the brain. So what I'm getting at is, if I've got this hidden trauma, blunt force trauma, and the patient appears shocky, but I know they hit their head. You with me? I know they hit their head, but there's nothing penetrating, and they appear shocky. I know it's not just head. Are you guys with me on that? It can't be just the head, because you can't lose that much blood in the head to appear shocky. To other areas in the body doing it. Let me say this.
Do you just like look for bruising in that?
You'll have to have a high index of suspicion, because the bruising is like waiting around to find bruising is like waiting around to see the blood pressure fall. It takes a little time to see the bruising. When you see bruising, please understand some time has passed. We haven't gotten here yet, but there's another abbreviation, if you will. TBI stands for traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury with a decrease in BP equals RIP. And that's just funny for rest in peace. Okay? If you've got a traumatic brain injury and your blood pressure is falling, you're going to die. You're just going to die. Can I be that bold? Can I be that prophetic? Can I make such a bold statement? You're going to die. Now, there is a miracle that could happen, but you're probably going to die. Why? Do you remember this? Huh? Your brain controls everything, and what's your brain not getting right now? It's not getting perfused. It's not getting blood. It's not getting oxygen. It's not getting nutrients. Do you guys remember that ICP, intracranial pressure, MAP, which is the actual blood pressure, and CCP, which is CPP, cerebral perfusion pressure, that equation starts getting really funky when the MAP's dropping, but the pressure in the ICP goes up. MAP can't overcome it. MAP is in a deficit. It's kind of like your checking account sometimes, you know. I spent more than I brought in. I'm in a deficit. It won't survive very long. That's what happens there. The pressure in the skull is so high, but the blood pressure is so low that nothing's getting in there and we have brain death. And that's why I can say they're probably going to die. So Nate, back to you. Do I want that blunt force trauma or do I want that penetrating trauma? Too many variables to determine. Too many variables to determine. Okay, let me get through this nonsense because it truly, to me, is nonsense. But it's in the curriculum. I wouldn't want you to go take a test question and not understand it because just because O'Brandon said it was nonsense, I didn't study it. I want you to see it for what it's worth, and I want you to also understand why it could be nonsensical. So there are 3 crashes inside an automobile crash. Duh. I'd say there could be 5, but they say 3. Crash number 1, car strikes an object. So it went from 70 miles an hour to 0 in less than so many milliseconds, whatever. The longer it took to stop, the better survivability, though. Number 2, the occupant hits the car. So the car was doing 70 and it stopped. Well, you're still doing 70 and at some moment you're going to stop. We're just kind of stacking things up, aren't we? So you stop moving at 70 miles an hour. That was collision number 2. Collision number 3, your organs are still moving at 70 miles an hour. And now they're going to come to a stop. And so they slam into the inside of your body. Think about it like this. The brain's moving at 70. The forehead hit the windshield or the bridge abutment or the plate of steel or the bumper. Whatever the forehead hit and stopped. Maybe it didn't hit anything. Maybe it just slung forward. But it stopped. The brain, being this gelatinous-like old jello moldy thing inside, slams forward. All this compression compresses the brain to the front of the skull, leaves a vacuum in the back of the skull. Now the brain's going to rebound, and now it's going to hit the back of the skull. It's kind of like, there's a name for that, Jordan. It's called coup contra coup.
That is not what I thought you were going to say.
Coup contra coup. That's specific to the brain. That's specific to the brain. That's where the brain slams forward and then rebounds back. Slams forward.
Whiplash.
Whiplash is
Just when your head.
that's the overextension or the hyperflexion of the spinal column. Yeah, whiplash pertains to a neck injury, spinal injury, instead of a head injury. When you slam the brain forward and it slams backwards, does it bruise? Does it start bleeding? Yeah, we'll talk about that when we have a whole chapter for head injuries. What about the liver? It's moving forward at 70 miles an hour, and it's coming against this ligament that runs like this in front of your liver that acts as a cheese slicer, if you will. When your liver hits that ligament at 70 miles an hour, it takes that liver and puts it in 2 pieces. Or what about the arch in the aorta? See that aortic arch? There's a ligament up here that attaches the aorta to the spinal column. Let me see your arm for a second. It's holding the hose up. Because if that ligament wasn't there, the hose would just collapse, right? It'd be like a water hose laying over a fence. It would just collapse. You need to hold that hose up so it won't kink. That's what that ligament does. It holds your aortic arch up so it doesn't kink. But if that aorta that's filled with liquid slams forward at 70 miles an hour, we could pull that ligament off the top of that aorta and they bleed out pretty damn quick. Ligamentum arteriosum is the name of the ligament. It will pull off the top of the ligament. And now the blood volume just pumps out into the chest, doesn't it? How does that patient look when you get there? Dead. They look really bad. They could be in the stages of dying, but they look dire. point of trivia. If I put the heart monitor on them, will I see VFib or VTAC? No. But they're not going to have a pulse. This is your kid on the four-wheeler accident, that scenario you guys worked where the AED was saying no shock advised. That person didn't need an AED. Shouldn't even have been applied. I've seen numerous well-intended, like firefighters, first responder kind of people without a lot of medical training, if any medical training, grab something out of the ambulance because they think they want to help the EMTs and paramedics, and they'll come out and they may even put the heart monitor on somebody. And they're like, he's got a pulse. I'm like, no, he's got electrical activity. He's got sinus tach. He does not have a pulse, and the injury is non-compatible with life. Thank you for giving me a piece of documentation I have to explain away in my report now. Because some lawyer, Joe, said, isn't this a heart rhythm that somebody should be alive with, and you put a sheet over them? Yeah, I did. Do not put these devices on these trauma victims, because you're going to see things on there that you may not want to see. Isn't that a sign of life, a good heart rhythm? Yeah, and the guy in the guillotine looked at the guy who dropped the knife too for a few seconds. When they turn their eyes and blink them at you and try to move their lips and speak and go, why did you do that? They're dead, aren't they? It just hadn't caught up with them yet. Death came before death, if that makes any sense at all. Not good. And you'd be surprised how well telephone poles hold up to car accidents. Some of them don't hold up, and the lines will be on top of the car when you get there, but you will be surprised. And trees, oh no. The big old majestic oak tree, it will still be a big old majestic oak tree. I have an oak tree out on East Main going out of Denison toward Carpenter's Bluff. There's a cedar tree there. And I saw the guy who died there that night, and that cedar tree is still very much alive. And there's a cross nailed to it as well. And I'm thinking, probably not the only person that hit that tree, and I'm sure others have done it. If it didn't hit the tree, it went through the house. So there you go. So look at this old Chevy Blazer. It's all messed up, isn't it? Just an example of the passenger hitting the inside of the car. Point out a few things as we go through this. These are just tips of the trade. Do I assess this vehicle for its injuries? Yeah, so as you approach the vehicle, you should look at it and go, are the airbags out? What happened to the bumper? Did the door fly open? Is it still intact? There are side impact beams here, blah, blah, blah. As I get up here, I'm going to look at the windshield. What am I looking for in the windshield? Cracked, shattered, eyeglasses. I've seen eyeglasses stuck in the window, in the windshield. Hair on the visor. I encourage you guys to look at the sun visor. If there's hair, that patient went up and hit that, so there's high incidence of spinal cord injury. I've seen them hit that and then peel that back. And it looks like it's just a cut until you put them flat on the backboard or gurney, and then that scalp falls off. It peels it, and then when they come back down, it falls over to protect it, or just falls back into place. Those are very grotesque. When you lay them down, you go, oh my God, there's a white skull there, and there's blood coming out of it. It will stun a new EMT. So there's the guy hitting that. In this scene, we've got the bruising of the brain and the bruising of the brain. And what type of injury do we call that? Coup contre coup. Coup contre coup. There's this saying that says, if a passenger If there are 2 or more occupants in the car and one of the occupants is dead, the significance of seriousness goes up because of the other occupants. Well, that's pretty common sense, isn't it? If it killed the passenger, the driver had to take something, didn't they? Most often. I would say any equivalent vehicular accident that had an occupant dead, even the person in the other car, that energy is still transferred there too, right? Now, semi versus motorcycle, the motorcyclist is dead. Am I worried about the semi driver? Usually not. A semi that pulls out on the highway and is coming up to speed and he's doing 5, 10, 15 miles an hour, somebody's doing 75 and runs and hits the back of that fully loaded semi. Am I really worried about the semi driver? A lot of times they don't even know they were hit. There's been instances of them dragging the car for 5 miles before somebody stopped them and said, you got a car under your trailer. But the person who ran into that, significant, right? Common sense approach to this stuff. Try not to abide by all of these rules. And it goes without saying, anyone ejected is a high-level trauma. Anyone ejected is a high-level trauma. That includes ejected from a motorcycle. So I keep picking on you, Luke, but that's just the way it is. If you are thrown from the scene, where's the energy going? With you. So do seatbelts save lives? Yeah, we used to lie to people and say, I've never unbuckled a dead person. Bullshit. That's a lie. But most often, I think we should have said, I've never picked up anyone alive who was thrown from a high-speed motor vehicle crash. That would be more likely the truth. Questions before we go on break? It's a Monday morning. Looks like you could use a little break. A little caffeine, pick me up. You like trauma better than medical? All right. Luke's going to explain to us a little bit later about the concept of cavitation waves. Luke's like, will you just leave me alone today? All right, guys, let's take a short break.